quick wolf sledge build. This is what I use. This is my Riven. It's just electric and status stance. These can be swapped for the galvanized versions if you want. Otherwise, this is basically what you should be using. Amalgam Organ Shatter, the heavy attack wind-up speed doesn't do anything. So if you'd prefer it, you can just use regular Organ Shatter, but it's only a 5% difference, so it doesn't really matter. Okay, getting onto the details of how this weapon actually works. Heavy attack wind-up speed doesn't function properly on this weapon. If you have some heavy attack wind-up speed, like, let's just use that again. This is how it works without a stance. So it works properly if you don't have a stance equipped. So you can see that this is speeding it up compared to not having one equipped. But as soon as you equip a stance, what happens is a heavy attack wind-up speeds stops working. So here's no heavy attack wind-up speed. And here's with heavy attack wind-up speed and a stance equipped. You can see that they're just the same speed. On the other hand, if you have a stance equipped, the attack speed actually does speed up the wind-up speed. So technically this is a bug, but it's kind of just how the weapon functions in reality, to be honest. So generally just don't mod for heavy attack wind-up speed. It doesn't do anything. You can if you want, and frankly what I'll usually do is I'll have Amalgam Organ Shatter on here anyways, because it's only a 5% difference between the two. And just being able to do the regular heavy attacks quickly, so like if you mess up the explosion throw, it locks you out of like doing damage less time. So Amalgam Organ Shatter, in my opinion, it's a good quality of life anyways. I would just keep it on there. Okay, so the way this weapon works in general is that it's just a hammer. This is just the normal hammer stance. If you throw it, it's a thrown weapon. And every single time this hits something, it'll explode. This explosion is different from the explosion that if, like all other glaives, if you throw and then you press the heavy attack button, it'll just explode. This explosion is technically a normal attack. But this explosion happens every single time it hits an enemy. So for example, if I just hit, I don't know, something here. Sure, we'll hit some bobards with no mods equipped. You can see that this will hit multiple times because it'll hit on the way there, make an explosion, and come back and then make another explosion. And what you can see it actually doing here is that after it hits a target, it'll seek out a second one and do the explosion on that enemy instead. So the important thing to know about how this weapon works, or I guess how glaives work in general, it's not even necessarily this weapon, is that, and even to a larger extent heavy attacks, is that their damage is multiplied by your combo counter, right? So if we use this on a charger, you can see that if I throw and it explodes and hits the target, you can see that we're doing 3100. That's because the damage is multiplied by my combo counter. So if I take this off, you'll see that the damage will be roughly halved if I don't have the initial combo there from the explosion damage. Yep, so 1550 instead of 3100. Makes sense? Works like a regular heavy attack. There's nothing really special about it other than that it's an explosion. This is also multiplicative with all damage mods. So it happens basically after all the other damage mods. So for example, if you have prime pressure point on here, these two apply together, and I believe this does about 6 or 10k damage now. And it crit, so even more. Okay, 8k damage. I'm bad at math. 3100 times 1.65 plus 1 or something. Anyways, cool. Multiplicative. Same thing with elemental mods. So all three of these multiply together, so 119 times 165 times the 2 from having 2x multiplier. All of these multiply together, so that's why you have all three of them. If this was just a regular elemental mod, same idea. It would just be a smaller number. Next thing is status damage. Status damage is applied after all of this other damage, so technically it's another multiplier. So it'll just take whatever the electric value was, for example, um, and it'll make that number bigger. So you can see that the electric procs will just be doing more damage because of it. So already we have 3 mods on this weapon that are multiplying against each other, which is awesome. Very, very good. Part of the reason that thrown weapons are so good is because you have this multiplying with these, multiplying with the fact that they're AoE. Next, we'll talk about melee influence. So we're just going to switch to our what is effectively two 60/60 mods in this ribbon. The way melee influence works in general, probably known for most people looking at these types of builds, but melee influence will just straight up spread all status procs on the main target to everything else in the area, as long as it procs. So it didn't proc there, so you can notice that like nothing that got an electric proc used melee influence, and you would be able to tell because these guys on the outside would get hit also, right? So this may take a couple of tenths, but you can see it. That's kind of how melee influence works, is that there's a 20% chance for every single electric proc that happens here that it'll spread to everybody else. Luckily, this weapon will hit like 3 times if you throw it, hit the target twice, and then use the explosion like after it hits them. So what you'll end up with is basically an explosion that's almost guaranteed to do melee influence, probably like a 75% chance, depending on how many targets it hits, right? Because each individual target will have a separate chance to proc melee influence. Another thing to know is that crit chance is doubled for heavy attacks. If it literally says that on the thing, so hopefully you do that. But so the explosion itself, when we detonate it, has basically double the crit chance of, or crit chance modifier that everything else does. So you can see that at least one of those explosions was much bigger than the other ones. Okay, any other mods worth explaining here? I think I basically explained everything. This is what the build looks like. Just as a stress test in the Simulacrum, I want to show this on a bunch of Eximus units. So let's use some like Eximus heavy gunners or something. Sure, arid ones, why not? Just to show how much damage this weapon does. It seems to work just fine. The only armor shard I have right here is from corrosive projection, which obviously is a very good thing to have most of the time. But if you don't have corrosive projection, it's fine to use any other type of armor strip, whether that's like a heat primer or a corrosive primer, or just any other sort of corrosive damage. All very good things on this weapon. Same with viral. If you have like a viral corrosive primer, that'd be ideal for a melee influence abuser like this. Another interesting thing to note is that this weapon actually ends up being pretty good, even not thrown. Or like just doing that to stack and then using the thrown version, because you can get the combo pretty fast because this weapon's range is pretty absurd, right? The slam attack is actually kind of huge also. So like this actually has a 10-meter slam radius. So to a certain extent, you can use this as like a slam build also, and it works fine. Which is actually one of the reasons that I prefer it over like normal glaives. It's just more fun to use. Like you don't feel like you're trolling by just swinging the weapon at things. Not to mention it looks cooler. So it's super worth using in my opinion. And I think that's it. Video games.